If anything happens in Taiwan, it is going to have very serious repercussions, not only with Japan, but also with Philippines, but also with other powers like Indonesia, Malaysia, etc. So Japanese have also put up their surface-to-air missiles, and the situation is not at all good. If this happens, the first victim is not going to be Japan. The first victim is going to be US. China makes a warship, a single warship, in 7 days. US makes it in 18 days. India makes it in 40 days. That's the difference. China is not making any efforts to calm down the situation. It is basically reaching and testing out and experimenting as to how it can take over Taiwan. With China having the latest aircraft carrier, it's only a matter of time that the Chinese flotillas will start reaching the Indian Ocean region very soon. That complicates matters for India.
Hello and a very warm welcome to all. You're watching Hindustan Times and my name is Aisha Varma. On this segment of Point Blank, we discuss Xi Jinping's maritime strategy amid the tension over Taiwan. And to help us understand the latest developments, we have HT's executive editor, Mr. Shishir Gupta, joining us. Sir, namaskar. Sir, would you be able to explain what the Taiwan tension is all about?
See, the Taiwan tension is quite a complicated issue because it involves multiple players in the game. Now, what has happened is, what is the current trigger is the statement made by the Japanese Prime Minister, Sane Takaichi, where she stated the obvious in the Japanese parliament, that is Diet, where she said that any emergency on Taiwan is going to be an existential threat on Japan. Now, this statement, the Chinese took umbrage to very seriously, and I think they were quite over dramatic about the entire issue. They went to UN, they threatened economic sanctions, they threatened, tourist sanctions kind of thing, in the sense that they asked their tourists not to go to Japan. And the tensions have escalated from there. Now, what has happened is that Sane Takaichi just said what is an obvious over there. In the sense that Taiwan is 110 miles from the Chinese mainland. Taiwan is also something about 80-90 miles from the closest Japanese island, which is Senkaku, which is contested by the Chinese, called as Diaoyu. Now, the fact remains is, if anything happens in Taiwan, it is going to have very serious repercussions, not only with Japan, but also with Philippines, but also with other powers like Indonesia, Malaysia, etc. So, the Chinese may have taken umbrage too, but what the Japanese Prime Minister has said is a statement of fact. Now, the matters have got more convoluted because Japan comes under the nuclear umbrella of US. So, the US President Donald Trump dialed up Sane Takaichi to tell her to calm down and lower down the tempers over there. Now, the Japanese today are saying that, listen, I'm facing a problem, I need you, that is US, to support me. Rather than look at China and first look at a trade deal with China. The problem in all this is, the big picture is that people in North and Southeast Asia, countries like Indonesia, countries like Philippines, countries like Malaysia, countries like Japan, they no longer look at US as the security guarantor of that area. And they are now saying that, listen, if this happens, we'll have to defend on ourselves. And that is where the problem is. In the meantime, after the statement has been made by Japanese Prime Minister, China has gone a whole hog towards Taiwan. I mean, you see daily movement of ships, daily crossing the DIZ, the identification zones, and basically trying to dominate that Taiwan Straits. That's what they're doing. At the same time, they are locking into radars in Okinawa, that is Japanese radars, making the Japanese really, look at the situation very seriously. So Japanese have also put up their surface-to-air missiles, and the situation is not at all good. The fact of the matter is this. And the point is that everybody is now looking at US to say that, will you come and protect us? towards what is now being seen as a expansionist design of the PLA. US on its part is looking at a trade deal. So while the world is saying that you are my strategic partner, US is trying to be a transactional partner, saying that, you first do a deal and then we'll talk about it. So that is what the complication right now is, and it's a very serious matter. You see, the problem in this is that Europe couldn't care a damn about it because it's far too far away from them. They couldn't care less about Taiwan as long as its semiconductors are taken care of. Right? This is not a problem of Middle East, but this is definitely a problem of Indo-Pacific. And let me tell you very clearly that if this happens, the first victim is not going to be Japan. The first victim is going to be US.
So we're also seeing China boost its naval power to a big extent with warships such as the Sichuan. You also have mysterious submarine ships which are making their way into media reports. Beyond this, recently there has been a massive deployment, 100 vessels over 3 seas. What is the game plan here?
See, the PLA Navy is growing exponentially and everybody understands that. Let me put you the facts. China makes a single warship in 7 days. US makes it in 18 days. India makes it in 40 days. That's the difference. In the past decade, China has added a full-fledged Indian Navy of 135 ships to its flotilla. That is the way the PLA Navy is expanding. And it is trying to dominate not only the South China Sea, it's trying to dominate the Indo-Pacific as a rival power to the US. China is growing, it's seen all over the Indian Ocean region. Its ships are operating from the Gulf of Aden all the way up to the Sea of Japan. So the point is that Chinese, they are exercising what they believe is a blue water navy where they have 3 aircraft carriers and the latest one being a very, very potent carrier, Fujian. And with ballistic missile submarines, with attack submarines, with diesel attack submarines, with warships, with destroyers, with cruisers, you name it and they have it. China also has the aircraft fleet to complement its armada. Okay. So the world is looking at an expansionist PLA Navy, and it is for the powers of the Indo-Pacific, to particularly the US, to look at this issue because it's a matter of very serious concern, because what it is doing is it is challenging the established dominance of the US Navy since World War II.
So, sir, when we also talk about America in this, and you've already spoken about its role a few minutes ago, but America does adhere to the One China policy. At the same time, they also are bound to help Taiwan defend itself. Will China risk an attack?
See, there is something which a US Admiral, his name was Philip Davidson. It's called the Davidson window. Now, Philip Davidson predicted that the Taiwan emergency is going to come between 2021 and 2027. In August 2023, on the sidelines of Malabar exercises, the then 7th Fleet Commander, Vice Admiral Carl Thomas, who's now the Fleet Commander of the entire US Navy, he predicted that the Taiwan emergency is going to come in 2027. The Americans know that the Taiwan emergency is going to come in, right? And the fact remains is that China is not making any efforts to calm down the situation. It is basically reaching and testing out and experimenting as to how it can take over Taiwan, which it thinks it belongs to the mainland China, take over Taiwan militarily, and so it's doing various exercises over there. Now, the exercises have twofold purposes. One is it is trying to say that, listen, this is my territory, you can't come over here. Second is he's experimenting the various routes over there. As to when it happens, it is prepared for it. It is for the US to understand this as to what is happening. Now, the Americans for quite some time have been talking about, there was Barack Obama who talked about the East Asia pivot. It never happened. Now, the national strategic security document that the Americans just now released, it talks about defending Taiwan. The fact of the matter is that, all these are words. They need to be translated into reality. That is what the problem lies. Now, if anybody says that, listen, this is what is happening in Taiwan, now the reaction you get is, let me first do the trade deal with China, and then we'll talk about it. So the fact is that, America is not putting money where its mouth is. And the situation is very serious. Why is the situation very serious? Let me expand to you. You see, Taiwan belongs to the first chain of islands that surround the mainland China. You have Japan, you have Taiwan, you have Philippines, you have Indonesia, you have Malaysia, and that's how the first chain goes. Now, in that region, which is actually the first chain of islands, actually, surrounds the South China Sea. The main ballistic submarine missile base of China is in this region, which is the Hangui Island. Now, the Chinese ballistic missile submarines make more noise, apparently, than the American submarines do. But the fact remains is that if Taiwan is co-opted by China, then the first chain of islands is breached by the Chinese, and their submarines are allowed to free flow into the entire Indo-Pacific, which means they can go up to California. Now, that is what the problem is. The other problem is that one of your main internet channels run through behind the first island chain. Now, if that happens, then you can understand the kind of leverage China is going to have on communications of this area, of the world, right? Third thing, with China having the latest aircraft carrier, it's only a matter of time that the Chinese flotillas will start reaching the Indian Ocean region very soon. That complicates matters for India. That complicates matters for Australia. That complicates matters for Philippines. And definitely that challenges the power of US as being the numero uno power of the world.
So then where do all of these developments essentially leave the Quad?
It was President Donald Trump who started the foreign ministers dialogue in 2017 in Trump 1. The Quad meeting, he started it. And the national strategic document, the NSS document that the US has released, also talks about Quad. But it has been 2 years since the Quad summit hasn't taken place, right? Now, the fact remains is that US alone cannot take on China if a Taiwan emergency takes place. It needs Quad because India is at the heart of Quad. Okay, it has the navy for it. It understands China, and it has the wherewithal to challenge anything that comes in the Indo-Pacific. Australia, Japan happen to be under the American nuclear umbrella. So they are basically alliance partners. India is the only one which is not in any alliance. That is why the Indian role is important in all this. But here again, the main thing is the Quad summit is now, it's waiting for President Donald Trump to sign the India-US trade deal. As of today, as we speak right now, the deputy USTR is in town in Delhi to negotiate the trade deal again. Now, again, what has happened is that US has actually put everything into the trade transactions. It is tariff, trade, tariff, trade, tariff, trade. It is not about what is the future strategy. And that is where Quad becomes important. Till now, Quad is a whole lot of talk. Quad is still to implement what it feels, what its basic objective is, to allow freedom of navigation in South China Sea. If Taiwan emergency takes place, you can say goodbye to the freedom of navigation in South China Sea.
So what is India's stance in this entire matter, which has to do with Taiwan?
India has a border dispute with China, right? India itself is facing a whole lot of problems over there. So when the May 2020 transgressions took place, you may recall that it was only India who took on China. Everybody else just uttered words and kept a backseat. Europe was never there. Europe is never there till such time it gets hit itself, right? The Americans talked about, restraint, so on and so forth, nothing more than that, right? Nobody else could care a damn. So the point is, India itself has a problem with China. It's dealing with the problem because what has also happened now is that China's great ally, Pakistan, is also now supporting its claims on Arunachal Pradesh. It recently issued a statement on that. So for India, Taiwan per se is not the priority issue in a way, because it itself has a problem with China, right? But India is part of that quad. India is committed to freedom of navigation. India is committed to sovereignty of nations, right? India has a trade relationship with Taiwan, right? So the point is that, it is for US to take a call on this. It is for Japan to take a call on this. It is for Philippines to take a call on it. It's for South Korea to take a call on it. It's Indonesia, which is a huge island change all over the place. They have to take a call on this. India can definitively help the situation or definitely act as a deterrent in the Indo-Pacific, provided US takes the lead in this. Okay? Somebody has to understand what is really happening over there right now, right? And, one cannot expect that everybody is taking a backseat and they want actually India to come and sort of protect Taiwan. No, this cannot happen. So, if you look at the scenario currently, today, China has missile parks all across its eastern seaboard. Now, they are armed with missiles like DF-16, hypersonic missiles like DF-17, and then missiles like DF-26, which can take on Guam, which is the main US base in the Indo-Pacific. Now, tomorrow, if a Taiwan emergency takes place, China will target warships using DF-16, DF-17 missiles, ballistic missiles, and ensure that none of them reach into South China Sea. It is for US to decide how it will take on China, because the scenario that builds up is that the US, using its ballistic missile submarines, targets the missile parks on the eastern seaboard, and in the meantime, the US warships move into South China Sea and protect Taiwan. Taiwan itself is a huge country, which is nearly about 13,000 square miles. And it won't be easy to hold because it has mountains also, which go up as high as 8,000 feet, right? So it is not going to be an easy exercise. But the fact remains is China is very well prepared for it. It only depends when China wants to do it. Let me tell you, Aisha, it is said that once President Emmanuel Macron asked President Xi Jinping as to how he wanted the world to remember him, or at least China to remember him. Apparently, the answer was that he said that Mao Zedong was seen as the man who gave us respect. Deng Xiaoping gave us economic empowerment. I would like to be remembered as the unifier. Now, it is for US to answer that question.
Sir, thank you so much for joining us and providing us with all of that crucial insight. Do continue to stay tuned to Hindustan Times as we track all of the developments here, but also stay tuned for next week's episode of Point Blank.